Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are diving into a topic that's, well, let's be real, it's on a lot of our minds.
Retirement.
Yeah, retirement. Or, well, maybe more like how much can we actually spend when we get there? You've heard of 4% rule, right?
Of course. It's everywhere. Hard to escape it, really.
Totally. But is it really like the magic number for a comfy retirement? That's what we're going to dig into today. And we've got some research to unpack. And let me tell you, it kind of throws a wrench into that whole 4% thing.
Yeah, the 4% rule is practically gospel, like you said.
Well,
Financial advisors, even government agencies, they all point to it. But, the thing is, the foundation of that rule, it might be a little shakier than people realize.
okay, so let's talk about that foundation. It's built on U.S. stock market history, right? That's a big one.
Exactly. And look, the U.S. market, it's had a pretty good run, got to admit that. But to rely solely on that, on its past performance, to predict the future for everyone, everywhere, especially when it comes to something as important as retirement income.
Yeah, that's a big leap.
It is. It's a bit like navigating with only your rearview mirror.
Ooh, I like that analogy. Okay, so this new research we're looking at, it takes a much wider view, right? Fills in the blind spots, so to speak.
Way wider. It analyzes over a century of data. We're talking all the way back to 1890.
Wow, okay.
And it doesn't just focus on the U.S. This study, it looks at 38 developed countries.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
It is,
Oh.
including places like Japan, which, they experienced those lost decades, prolonged economic stagnation.
Right, right. So including those different economic scenarios really paints a more, well, a more realistic picture, I guess.
Exactly, because past performance is not always,
The best predictor of future results.
exactly.
Yeah.
So with this huge global data set, they wanted to see what happens to the 4% rule when you put it through, let's say, a tougher test. And the results, well, they're pretty eye-opening. They found that using a 4% withdrawal rate led to a 17.4% chance of, get this, completely running out of money before the end of retirement.
Okay, 17.4%, that's a pretty significant chance, like way higher than most people would be comfortable with, I think. I mean, that's roughly 1 in 5 retirees who might find themselves coming up short.
No, I see why this research caught your eye. And honestly, if just focusing on the U.S. paints such a, well, maybe an overly optimistic picture, what does that mean for people who are relying on those numbers?
It's a big concern. And it's not even just about investment returns, which is a whole other can of worms. This study also factors in something called longevity risk.
Okay, longevity risk.
Yeah.
For those of us who, aren't throwing that term around every day, what does that even mean?
It means people are living longer, which is great, of course. But it also means our retirement savings need to stretch even further.
Right, of course.
This study takes that into account, that longer lifespan, so it creates a much more realistic picture of what retirees are facing and probably will be facing even more in the future. So we're talking longer lifespans, a broader view of how markets actually behave around the world.
Yeah, this is where I think things get even more interesting and maybe a little worrying if you thought, $1 million was going to be enough to retire on. But we're going to dig into all that right after this quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, so we're back. And we just got hit with some pretty eye-opening numbers about the 4% rule, or maybe we should just call it the not-so-safe rule. Right?
Right.
But before we all panic and start imagining, living on ramen noodles in retirement, I gotta ask, what does this research say about, like, solutions? Did they look into any other strategies that might help boost those withdrawal rates? Give us some hope here.
Yeah, they did. They looked at a few things like adjusting the balance, between stocks and bonds in a portfolio.
Okay, classic portfolio juggling.
Right. And they even tested out those target date funds.
Oh yeah, target date funds. Those are getting popular. For anyone who isn't quite at retirement age yet, those are the ones that, automatically get more conservative with your investments as you get closer to your planned retirement date.
Exactly.
Sort of like a hands-off way to manage risk, I guess.
That's the idea, yeah. But here's the catch. The study found that even with these, supposedly safer target date funds, the outcomes, they weren't that different from just a traditional stock bond mix.
So even with all the fancy algorithms and automatic adjustments, it's not like a silver bullet.
Not so much, no. They didn't, at least in this research, provide that downside protection that I think a lot of people assume they do.
Interesting. Okay, so no easy answers there. What about people who are, getting closer to retirement and thinking, maybe I should work a few extra years to shore up those savings? Did the study look into that at all?
Yeah, they did. And working longer, even if it's just part-time, it can make a difference. It gives your savings a chance to, potentially grow for a longer time. And it also, of course, shortens the period when you're actually relying on them.
So delaying those withdrawals, even for a bit, can really have a big impact.
It can be a really powerful lever, yeah. And it kind of highlights something, that might not be obvious right away. This research, it's not just about like the amount of money you have, but also how you approach this whole stage of life. Remember we were talking about that idea of longevity risk
Yeah,
earlier.
absolutely. Yeah. People living longer, retirement lasting longer, all that.
Well, managing longevity risk, it isn't just about having enough money to last. It's about like having a plan for how you want to live those extra years.
So it's not just a financial plan, it's a life plan too.
Exactly. It might mean, exploring some new passions, finally taking that trip
Yeah.
or spending more time with loved ones. Having that plan, that sense of purpose, it's key.
I love that you brought that up. It's such an important point. This isn't just about crunching numbers, it's about designing a fulfilling life in retirement. But okay, let's be real for a second. The financial piece is still pretty important, right? We've talked about different investment approaches, maybe working a little longer, but where do we even begin to put all this into practice?
Yeah.
Maybe we can lay out some concrete steps. What do you think?
Okay, so we've talked about the potential pitfalls of the 4% rule, and we've touched on some ways to maybe like shore up our retirement plan. But let's get practical for a sec. Someone's listening to this right now thinking, okay, I need to like rethink things. Where do they even start?
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure. But I always say start with the basics. Look at your saving strategy. Can you squeeze out a little bit more to put towards retirement?
Even a little bit helps, right?
Absolutely. Even a small increase can make a big difference over time, thanks to the magic of compounding.
The snowball effect. But it's not just about how much you save, is it? It's also about how that money is actually invested. You got it. Diversification is key. This research focused on stocks and bonds, but it's smart to think about spreading your investments across different asset classes.
So, like real estate, things like that.
Exactly. And don't forget about inflation. We've all seen what it can do, how it can like chip away at how far your money actually goes. Investing in things that can outpace inflation, like inflation protected securities, that can help make sure your retirement nest egg doesn't shrink over time.
That's such a good point. You could have $1 million saved, but if a loaf of bread costs 50 bucks by the time you retire, it's not going very far.
Exactly. And while we're talking about practical steps, don't underestimate just being informed, knowing your stuff. This research is a perfect example. The more you understand about the potential challenges and opportunities out there, the better decisions you can make for your future.
Knowledge is power, as they say. And this whole conversation has really driven home for me that retirement planning, it's not just about crunching numbers and looking at spreadsheets. It's about designing a life you're excited about, a fulfilling life, one where your finances support those dreams and aspirations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about taking control of your financial future and, creating a retirement that is both meaningful and crucially sustainable.
Beautifully said. Huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through all of this today. It's been really eye-opening.
It's been my pleasure. This is a conversation I think we all need to be having, so thank you for having me.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. Remember, retirement might seem far off, but the choices we make today, they matter. Until next time, happy planning, everyone.